In this video, I'm going to talk about the 529 savings plan for private school, specifically for K through 12. And if this is your first time at our channel or you haven't subscribed, click on the subscribe button at the bottom. My name is Travis Sickle, Certified Financial Planner with Sickle Hunter Financial Advisors. All right, I'm not the biggest fan of the 529 plans, especially if you're using them for K through 12. I think you're going to understand that while we go through the process of explaining the 529 plan and why you can use it for K through 12, but there are instances where you might want to take a look at it. So let's get into the basics and we'll go from there. So the 529 plan, whether or not you use it for K through 12 or for college, it doesn't matter. They're the same plan. It's just what you're using it for. So if you're using it through K through 12, you just need to make sure that it's a qualified tuition program. So let's start at the very beginning. The 529 plan is a type of account that gets funded with after-tax dollars. So these are dollars that you've already gotten in your paycheck or in your bank account. You're putting them into the 529 plan. Inside of the 529 plan, there are investments. So you take those dollars, you put them into stocks or bonds or whatever funds that you have. They grow. And if you use them for a qualified tuition program, they come out tax and penalty free. So it's relatively recent that there's been changes in the tax code that allows us to use the 529 plan. So it was the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that changed the 529 plan so we can start to use it for K through 12. You can use up to $10,000 or pull $10,000 out of the 529 plan on an annual basis per beneficiary. So if you have 3 children, 3 separate 529 plans, you could take that money out for each one of them, $10,000 for each, so that'd be an aggregate of $30,000. So it is per plan beneficiary. So that's how much you can take on an annualized basis, $10,000. Now going back to that tax benefit, if you have a state income tax benefit, then you want to take a look at your state's 529 plan because that is the only way that you're going to get your state's tax incentives. But if you don't have state income tax like we don't have here in Florida, then you can look at anywhere in the country and open up any 529 plan. And if that is the case, what I would take a look at is looking at the actual investments and the fees. Those are going to be the 2 biggest factors when looking at 529 plans or comparing them. And because you can look at other 529 plans, I'd encourage you to look at the investment options of the different 529 plans so you can choose the one that's going to best suit you, because the investment choices inside of those plans vary pretty widely. Some of them have mutual funds, some of them have ETFs, and they all have different companies that they deal with or different firms that manage those investments. So you want to do your due diligence and look a little bit closer at the plan that you're going to select. And don't think that you just have to use your own 529 plan. You have a lot more to choose from. Another point about funding these plans is you can gift up to $15,000 per donor per beneficiary. So let's say your grandparents want to contribute, and let's say your next door neighbor wants to contribute, your friend wants to contribute. Anybody can contribute up to $15,000. There's another loophole or another tax benefit. You can do up to $75,000, which is 5 years worth of contributions in a given year. So you can do $15,000 or the $75,000 one time. So you can put quite a bit of money into these 529 plans. And once that money is in there, if you don't use it for K through 12, you can flip it over and use it for post-secondary, college. So there is a benefit to using it later in life. Now, here's another thing to consider. If you have a leftover 529 plan, you can also change the beneficiary to your kids. So they just have to be in the same family in order to change that beneficiary. So you can change that beneficiary to your kids. And you can actually open these plans up whenever you want. You don't even have to be married or pregnant or any of the above. You can open up one today with the idea that you're going to have kids down the road. So maybe that's getting a little ahead of yourself, but you just need to know that you need to have a social security number and a living beneficiary. Those are the only 2 criteria to open up a 529, and then you can go ahead and change it on later down the road. So one of the most attractive pieces to the 529 plan is the tax deferral. So in regards to it making sense for K through 12, that's a tough situation because you want the money to sit in the 529 plan long enough so to grow enough that tax deferral was valuable enough. And if you only give it 4, 5, or 6 years, you're really not going to get a huge benefit out of it. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use it or you can't fund it, but you should just know that that tax deferral benefit's not going to be quite as big as you might think. But a good way to think of the 529 plan is you don't have to use it all for K through 12. You can use it later on down the road, or not 100% of the funding has to be done with the 529 plan. You can do it with non-retirement dollars too. So the 529 plan isn't the only option. So that might help alleviate some of the questions of whether or not you should use a 529 plan or not, that it could be used with other plans or other strategies that you have for K through 12 or college later on down the road. Another question that you want to think of is the 529 plan is something that you almost have to know what's going to happen in 5, 10, 15, or 20 years down the road, where a lot of times you just don't know. I mean, you have hopes that your child, your son or your daughter, or whoever the beneficiary of the 529 plan is going to use it for school. But what if they go to a public school and they don't need the money? Or what if they don't end up going to college? So you don't want to fund it completely with the 529 plan, kind of to answer that, well, should I use this if they're not going to go to school, if they're not going to use it? So on the flip side of that, if you don't use the dollars, then when you pull the money out, it's not going to have 10% penalty and ordinary income on every dollar that comes out of the 529 plan. It's only going to be on the growth, because the principal or what you put into the 529 plan has already been taxed. So you're not going to get a double tax on that. You're not going to get a double penalty. So you also want to consider that. So don't think that there's a huge tax benefit just by putting it in there because you're getting this tax deferral, because it has to be in there for a long time in order to get a huge benefit. And don't think just because the money's locked up either that it's a terrible idea and it's gone forever if it's in the 529 plan, because that's not entirely true either. Now, the last point about the 529 for private school, K through 12, or even for college is the investments that you choose inside of this plan. It's probably not the greatest idea to think that you're going to get the same investment return as you would with a retirement plan or another investment, because the goal is much shorter. So there's a good chance that you're going to have to be a little bit more conservative on that particular goal rather than your retirement or even for college planning. So if that's the case and you're going to have a 529 plan for K through 12 and then another one, you might want to separate them. So you might want to have one specifically for K through 12 and then one for college planning, just so you can visualize the investments and actually see the different performances. So if you put the K through 12 in something a little bit more conservative, whereas the college planning could be a little bit more aggressive, especially in those earlier years. But again, if you're planning through K through 12, I mean, you know, when your son or daughter is 5 or 6 years old, I mean, that's not a whole lot of time, especially if we hit a recession or a downturn in the market. You do not want that entire portfolio in an equity portfolio achieving a higher rate of return because it's such a short time frame. But again, you have to look at your particular goal, how much you want funded, how much risk that you're comfortable with. But that is a big consideration when choosing or funding a 529 plan for K through 12. If you're thinking about funding a 529 for K through 12 or have questions about it, leave them in the comments below. Let me know. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and leave your comments down at the bottom.